Good evening, and welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't Africans, the Think Show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so called African American didn't find his way to America in the trunk of a ship. I'm your host, the Indigenous One. Tonight, we're going to talk about random issues plaguing everyday people. And this is part two of a conversation we started a couple of months ago with our guest Jay Smith. We started this conversation a little while ago and just wanted to just show how from what we talked about the last time is manifesting itself to this very day. And there was some things shared to us all in that last speak that a lot of people picked up on. I'm shocked that a lot of people picked up on it. Well, tonight we're going to go the same way, but we're going to add a little more seasoning salt to what was said last time. So without any further ado, without any music playing, the sound of frogs and all that, we're going to bring them to the mic right now. Jay Smith, how you doing, brother?
Very well. Thank you, Kerry.
Well, without any further ado, I just want to get into the conversation we were having earlier because you touched on a lot of stuff that are being made clear for people who just barely, just have their eyes open. And I wanted to just go over some of those items with the audience, if that's okay with you.
Very well.
Earlier we were talking about, the things. Earlier we were talking about the things that's going on, just in everyday life. And one of the things that's going on in everyday life and that hits a lot of people's everyday life is the use of movies, Hollywood, images made by big budgeted studios, and the images that are being put out to the masses. And one of the movies that you talked about earlier was a movie that had a depopulation agenda called The Avengers. Could you tell us what's the significance of the movie Avengers?
It's known as Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. Those two have definitive depopulation agendas built into the whole movie, the whole franchise, especially at the end of game, the end game. If you watched Avengers Infinity War, it starts out right away where they're on an Asgardian ship. There's a being referred to as Ebony Maw who's actually stepping over the corpse of the beings they annihilated on board the ship. And he's sounding like a charlatan minister preaching, claiming that their suffering is really salvation. So their sacrifice is considered as being exactly that. And it parallels to what you're seeing right now. People are running around trying to take some injection that they don't know the contents in. And the end game is more of the same. It's totally depopulation. Even though I've said that the COVID operation is multifaceted, one of them is definitely depopulation on the list. That's why I brought that out regarding. There's been several other movies that hint to it as well.
So the depopulation agenda, is that what we're seeing today in real time?
Yeah. Yes. And I'll go as far as to say it may have happened before. Or what we're seeing is a repeat of things that have occurred before in terms of this dimension or reality field. So I hold to the notion that there are higher dimensions than this one. We're not just the only ones, in existence, um, within this realm, frequency, dimension, however you want to refer to it as. But I tend to think that it has happened before, what we're seeing.
Well, one of the things that you said that they can hide behind or they can play the shell game under is that aspect of name changing to protect the guilty.
Yeah,
What?
all names have been changed to protect the guilty. What I mean by guilty, those that are involved in malevolent activities that unless you're delusional, you know that the world which you're living in, you have beings in the form of people and others that are engaged in activity that actually outright malevolent, deviant, you name it. And can you run the question again? Because I just got brain fog just now. I wanted to make sure I'm on the right track.
No, when we're talking about the name changing, what are the
Yeah.
name, the purpose of the name changes? Not just
Right.
on certain people, but upon ourselves too.
Yeah, names are the name game that's used in the legal community. They always seem to be emphasizing your name. They need it in order to engage in their distortions of your history. And I say that for a reason because history is really subjective when you really think about it. Because it's basically a questionable account of collectives. It's not. It cannot be applied to every man, woman, and child. If you think that, you need to get your head examined because truth of the matter is, it's about collectives
Right.
and name changes, regardless whether you read it in your ancient texts, your religious texts, history books of empires. They're always constantly changing maps. They're always changing the name of empires. You have religious figures with certain names that you don't know what you're calling, and you're not aware whether or not the names that you're calling upon, whether they're benevolent or malevolent. So the religions themselves do actually play a role in the manipulation and control of the masses. So it doesn't matter what the empire you name, they will change the name on that. They'll change the maps, change the name on that as well. Matter of fact, if you refer to a law school textbook, I think it's referred to as corpus juris secundum, according to the body of law. It defines name as a word or words used to distinguish and identify a person as it's used in the legal community. And when you start to look up the word person, the word person doesn't apply to a man or a woman. It applies to the Latin persona, and that refers to an artificial entity, to statue in a fountain, or it's to be, as Roman lawyers would put it, as to include slaves, including the dead too, if you really think about it, because the all capital rendition of what's supposed to be your name signifies the dead or a corpse or a corporation. So the reason why I bring that up is because you cannot be confined to a name. That does not define you. Why do I say that? I say it because you have multiple life cycles. As an eternal being, you can't be confined to a name. And as an eternal being, regardless of how you enter this system, especially when you're born in the hospital, they're tampering with you while you're in the hospital. As soon as you're born, if you're born in a hospital, you can't testify to your actual name, whether it's given to you or not, because your memory doesn't fare you too well. It's hearsay. Hearsay information should not be admissible in any system of law or court. So hearsay, including your birthday, really, to tell you the truth, that doesn't your memory doesn't fare you well there either. You got to remember the dates, the calendars, they're altered anyway. So even when you start giving reference to time, you know, you don't really know exactly the date or time um, that is being applied while we're here. We live in a very lower dimensional field, and we do share this space with other beings that are very malevolent. That's why when you come through here, it's very hard to navigate through here because you're constantly being tampered or messed with. So to keep yourself clear of any karma or karmic debt, which you have to clear, you have to be very vigilant and you have to be, on your toes while coming through here. Some of us are here to help out, and others are here to repeat what they missed.
What is with all that said, what's the purpose of life?
The purpose of life serves itself. As an eternal being, you are here and you're here to experience life, but it should be experienced in a way that is meaningful. But it's definitely not in the manner in which you see it here. In terms of what I'm really trying to say is, you're not supposed to actually be here um, carrying on in a manner where you treat people in a way that you wouldn't want to be treated.
Right.
The saying that people have read, let's say we give reference to the Bible, do unto others like you would have them do unto you, that holds true. But if you don't want something done to you, it's very simple. You don't impose that on anybody else. So your life while you're here is it has to have meaning, and the meaning is you have to reach the highest calling. There's no higher calling than accessing your higher self, and if not, you clear yourself enough to access your higher self and to live life that reaches where you ascend, where you need to be going. You're not supposed to stay here. I tend to think this is a kind of hell when you really think about it. I don't think there's anybody that can really express to me why my suspicion or assertions are not true regarding that. We're not supposed to keep coming back here. You're supposed to pass through. So when you see the part of the Bible that says that you're in the world but you're not of it,
Right.
it's really meaning that. In other words, you're supposed to be passing through. You're supposed to be given assistance whenever it's required. And when you see if somebody you could help, you do that. But what you do is you always keep yourself clear of anything relating to, the appearance of evil or bad malice towards others. You're supposed to do your best.
Well, well, the meme you sent me, which we put in the thumbnail for this podcast tonight, the piece that you sent me says euthanize your TV. It's not murder. I know what you mean, but can you tell the chat what you mean? I think it's funny.
Well, the image that you see a television set like almost in a humanoid form, commanding the individual that's bowed down, what to do. If you ever listen to people when they're, and especially when they, have a good dose of mainstream news broadcasts, they start parroting what comes out of the news broadcast as if they don't have a mind of their own. So over 10 years ago, I had done that. I realized television is a medium and that I don't have any business watching it in the manner that it's being used for. I mean, even Hollywood, I may have referenced a movie. You might watch a movie and catch it. You might catch little bits and pieces of what they're doing. They'll express it in the form of a movie. Some people look at it just entertainment, but when it comes to like television programs, um, whether it be news broadcasts or just regular programming, they don't call it that for no reason. You really are being programmed, and Hollywood is definitely about behavior modification. You look at a movie and you're basically patterning yourself in terms of certain situations, and you're supposed to act this way, or versus you face with another situation, you act that way. But that's not the way you should be gaining your wisdom and knowledge from. You're supposed to be looking to other sources to learn. If you confine it to just that, because even when I was in the public school system, they made it their business to tell you that in order to be current, you must watch the news. And there's other forms of medium too. You must read the newspaper, um, and pretty much that's what they emphasize. You know, I kind of want to step back a little bit in that law school textbook.
Yes.
Um, the definition for public, not a very good definition. It basically, um, I'm not going to say it verbatim from as I remember it. It says the unlearned, the unthinking, the ones that respond to first impressions only. That's the definition of public. Not a good definition. It's not a good place to be, in terms of what we call public, or
Could you
being members of the public.
could you say that definition again, please?
The unlearned, the unthinking, the ones who respond to first impressions only. The reason why it's like that, and they do treat you accordingly, is because that's all they're going to give you is first impressions.
Right. You talked about when you're talking about images and messages and mediums, those things which are used to get a idea across to us. You talk about movie, and another one of the movies you talk about is They Live. Can you talk about some of the similarities in They Live and what we see today?
Yeah, in the movie, that's a classic. That's with a wrestler used to be a wrestler, Rowdy Piper, and Keith David. Those are the main characters in the movie. If you ever notice, the movie is symbolic, and it actually centers around a pair of sunglasses that makes you see things that most people are not seeing. It opens your eyes or your awareness. And the character played by Rowdy Piper, he takes these glasses and he's looking around him. And everything that you read has very simple references to what the essence of anything you're reading um, is actually meaning, such as obey, consume, don't question authority, um, things in a very, very subjective position that they put you in. And through the rest of the movie, there's a problem that exists that involves a transmitting antenna that's broadcasting a signal. And it's basically referencing what is actually happening to the populations on the earth. They're broadcasted to by malevolent controllers that have them pretty much caged in. So the movie is a classic because it's referencing what actually is actually happening, and has been happening since all of us that are listening right now have been alive.
What when you talk about the sunglasses and the people not being able to see. What do you mean by that?
Well, you don't know if you can't see the difference between that which is benevolent or malevolent. And by the way, Kai Green, I agree with you on that. The television, I mean, you watch it, you watch the news. I think I've said this before. You could watch the news as many times as you want, but how many times are you going to watch how many ways a person gets killed? That's not doing you any good. So I agree with you on that. There's nothing but bad news because that's where they want your focus constantly, 24/7. Now, what was the thing again? I wanted to get back to that.
In They Live, you were talking about certain scenes or certain images in the movie. What are those images that we relate today? And one of the things you were saying, sunglasses. And my definition of sunglasses is that which blocks out all light. It's a personal definition. It's not the definition that everybody goes and gets. But what are some of the images in that movie that you see standing on the corner every day?
Well, what I got out of it is that people who are not tuned, or like you've heard the saying, when the blind leads the blind, both fall into the ditch.
Right.
Generally speaking, is that if you can't tell the difference between malevolent and benevolent, good and evil, um, you're actually blind on that level, and you would not be able to see uh, an agenda or anything that's centered around you know doing you in, carrying out, causing you to carry out self undoing acts. If you can't see that fat man behind the skinny tree, which is very visible to everyone else that knows the difference, you are blind because he's very obvious. And when I say that, and I'm talking about what's going on today,
Right.
people think this is a salvation operation. It's not. Trying to get you to take a substance that you don't know the contents of. And not only that, they're threatening you, drawing coercive and direct means to get you to take it. So if you can't see that, then you don't know the difference between right and wrong, especially where they're advertising it so much. There's people walking around you right now that are advertising it like they want you to take it after they take it. Or if they did take it, nobody knows who's getting what. It's multifaceted. Some people might check out as soon as they take a good dose. I had a guy, a former coworker of mine, tell me that he thinks he got COVID, but the guy took the shots already. So now he's waiting the results of the test. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I mean. Instead of these people realizing they've been lied to, they're like being strung along.
You once said whoever loses the mind war is done. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, where the mind goes, that's where the body will follow. In other words, your mind is where they try to access everything else about you. If you lose that, you are done. You're finished. You're not going to recover at, if you can't recover your mind. That's why I said euthanize that television set, because and anything mainstream, really, to tell you the truth, because you have to basically um, draw from your higher self. You got to draw from your own power. You can't give your power away to somebody else. We were living in a realm. There's a lot of energy vampires all around us. They're not about correcting themselves. You don't go there with them.
So what do you do? So for people who want to know, well, what do I do? Because I keep running into these cats that ain't talking about nothing. It sounds good, but after I listen to them for 3 or 4 months, the shit starts sounding whack. What advice would you give those people?
Well, one thing I know for sure, I think you had somebody on that actually mentioned something about astrology. Astrology is a very good source of knowing yourself. If you know your the aspects of your chart and your signs, you have your moon and rising and sun sign. If you get a very good astrology book, see, that's another thing. That science is censored. It's actually suppressed. There's not many books, like one sister said, that you can actually find to read up on that subject. You just have people that have surface information about it, but you got to go a little deeper than just your sun sign.
Right.
That is the key to knowing what weaknesses you have and what you need to work on. If you get a very good astrology book, it'll actually point you in that kind of direction. I'm not trying to say just that alone, but it's a start to knowing yourself, and it's a start for you to knowing other people. You're not going to know. See, the reason why they suppressed it is because, especially the church, is because they wanted you not to know it, because they didn't want you to know yourself or your neighbor, while they exploited both of you. So I mentioned that for a reason. Know yourself. Know thyself is the proverb. If you don't know yourself, you're not going to go anywhere without knowing yourself first. You can't be pointing fingers at other people, because with every finger you point, there's three fingers pointing right back at you, you know? So we shouldn't be down here trying to judge one another in the sense of the word of judgment. We're supposed to be down here trying to work together and solve, life's, you know, dramas and problems that's brought to you by those that are not actually in the business of working on themselves. Instead, they're just scheming on how to feed off of you some more.
Taboo subjects. There are some subjects that we never really hit on. I mean, it's kind of like you say, it's the elephant in the room, but we never talk about them and bring them to the forefront so they can be resolved. Why do you think that is?
Well, a lot of us ride on narratives fed to us, given to us by the church, the religions that we follow. So it never gets touched in certain subjects in terms of working on yourself. There are whole myriads of subjects that are not that you're not allowed to talk about, or at least the government doesn't want you knowing about it and things like that. And when I say government, those that have this, you know, sickness about them that they need to control you. But you can't go through life um, riding on a platform that's not conducive to you working on yourself. You can't hide behind the collectives, tribalism, whatever you want to call it, because at the end of the day, you know, when it comes down to, if you decide when you pass on, all right, the universe, you're not going to sin just because you accepted Jesus, because there's no way that somebody, a name that's mentioned like that, and they're telling you that Jesus paid it all. No, nobody pays your karmic debt but you. That doesn't make any sense. You know, you're not going to sin if you are still, you know, dealing with issues. For a good example, fits of wrath. You have anger issues. You have issues where you can't stop lying. You're always trying to get over on people. What makes you think any benevolent source wants you in that type of realm, knowing that you practice those things? So you have to work on yourself, and you have to clear out those actual impulses that you tend to carry out. so that you can move on and not come back here again.
Do you
So
think? Do you? Okay, I see exactly what you're saying on that. But do you think that's the reason why people run to these religions so they can lay all their problems down wherever they, however they say or however they do? People just join all these religions. And one of the things I notice about this religion that the more they've grown, the more the world has gotten ridiculous. What are your thoughts on this?
well, it varies from one person to the other. Some are grown into it. They didn't have a choice in the matter. As for me, I wasn't forced to go to church. I only went because of my friends. They went, and with others, they're being recruited. They're being told certain things, and they buy it. And you know, the one that's trying to get them to join usually will give something that's very enticing, and they join. They follow it. You know, but at the end of the day, you know, you still have problems because the religions themselves, they have a satanic element involved in them. All of them, every one of them, even the Christian religion for sure, definitely. I know we're probably going to touch on it. That Book of Job is a good example of that, and I'll tell you why I say what I'm saying. And there's other references I could mention too. That you cannot sit there and tell me that that's not the case.
So Job, what's the big confusion or the conundrum with the word Job or the whole thought of Job with how we're living today?
People don't see that book for what it really is. That section of the Bible, that's actually a slave narrative. Only reason why they don't see it because they pronounce it differently. Out here, it's called Job. In the Bible, it's called Job. But
Ooh.
when you read the story, now whether the story is allegorical or is the composite character, that's not the point. When you read it, you see that there is something going on between what's supposed to be a benevolent being that's causing all the wrecking havoc, if we're to accept that as being as such on this earth and who knows where else, and what's called the Lord asking this being called Satan, where have you been? And the being says, well, I've been to and fro, walking upon the earth, walking up and down in it. So the Lord tells, and it was supposed to be Satan, and there were other so called angels there with them. And the Lord says to Job, have you considered my servant Job? Now, servant, you could call it what you want. That's a slave. Okay. So, anyway, supposedly Yeshua's evil and he's righteous and this and that and he holds fast, whatever. I'm not saying it verbatim. So this being says, well, yeah, of course he does all those things. Could you give him whatever it is that he wants? But you take those things away from him, or you do this and this to him, and you'll see differently. He'll even curse you to your very face. So what does this so-called being that's asking the question about his servant or slave, what does he tell Satan? Pretty much he says, okay, do it. Now, you tell me, is that an, a benevolent exchange or is it malevolent? Now, if you're under some kind of spell, you would not see that as malevolent. You would see it as, oh, it's benevolent based on the doctrine they give you.
Right.
But the way I see it, that exchange there involves a slave, and it does not matter. Towards the end of the story, you're told that this Job had did had not done anything wrong, but yet that was actually put upon him. Now, people say it's a test, but I say this: if that's a slave narrative, and it is a slave, that's basically saying that regardless of whether you're right or wrong, you're going to be messed with and give the seal of approval for being messed with at any time. So that's why I question it.
Because you saying the Lord sacrificed him, it was okay.
Yeah, everything seems to be about sacrifice. Everything seems to be about sacrifice. When you look at some of the Bible scripts, short for scriptures, the scripts, and it's always centered around you pretty much living like a slave, like sheep, sacrifice. There's a section in the one of the epistles in the Bible that says that you're supposed to present yourself as a living sacrifice. Now, what does that sound like to you?
We shall overcome. So,
That's not a good position to be in, Carrie.
yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So when you were talking about sheep, they're referenced in the Bible as the most sacred animal. Why?
Well, it's being presented that way, but you got to keep in mind that sheep is considered a dumb animal anyway. So it has to be led. It needs a shepherd. That's the state they definitely really want you in. I mean, the rulers of this realm or world or dark world wants you be in that position. The Lamb of God, so to speak. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly being told. A matter of fact, I need to backtrack to even uh the book of Genesis. There's a good example. Abraham. That story right there. That's a problem in itself. The Lord asks or tells Job to take his own son, who he loves, and to this mountain and sacrifice him there as a burnt offering.
So the Lord tells Job to do this.
No, Abraham.
Oh, okay. Because I'm not really versed in
Yeah,
that.
that's in Genesis.
Okay, the Lord
Uh,
tells Abraham
yes,
to
that,
sacrifice his son.
yes.
So this is something that I've asked ministers, I've asked bishops, I've asked popes, I've asked all these cats who's supposed to be a representation of Jesus on this place. And when I ask them, who is this Lord? Who is the Lord? What is a Lord? They all seem to want to shut down the conversation. Why is that?
Well, when I think of Lord, I think about landlord or the lords over there overseas where they were lording over people.
Right.
Somebody that actually has you in shackles. The Lord.
Landlord.
Whatever.
Landlord.
Yeah, I mean all these lordships.
Right.
It's not that's not your purpose for your existence to lord over somebody. So whether you get an answer or not, just like I got whatever response I got from my question when I was a little boy, as I expressed in the first part of this type of broadcast, you're given doctrine. That's what you're given. That's all they're going to give you. The Abraham account, you're given a doctrine that's presented to every Christian within the Christian religion, supposedly to test Abraham's faith. But why a test like that? Why a test to actually cause you to do something malevolent,
Right.
something evil?
Right.
If you can't see that for what it is, and then, I can understand why people don't see it because you're constantly being led down the path of thinking that anything that's done by a deity is good. But within the same text book called the Bible does say who the God of this world really is. When I ask a Christian that question, especially when we're going down this type of rabbit hole, they start to freeze up when you ask them that question. They know the answer, but they're being dishonest. They don't want to tell you because it's going to make them look a certain way, so they don't answer the question. I said, who does your Bible say the God of this world is? I know it to be Satan in terms of way the text read. It says the exact name and reference to it. They don't want to answer because of where I was going with the question. They knew where I was going, but that's why I say with it. But see, it's very frightening for people, to come up with the truth of their situation or where they're in because they feel like they've lost it all if they really go down that path. But they don't have to be fearful of that. All they need to be is honest, and then I give them the true measure of what they really supposed to be doing. You're not supposed to live in fear. It's not good to live in fear, your whole life.
You once said that the most sacred animal is a sheep. What's the difference between a sheep and a lamb?
The lamb is a young sheep. The lamb is I guess to those that want you to be like that, you know, is it allegorical?
No,
Hey,
it's like, well, why? Because you said sheep is one of the dumb animals, and I wanted to know what's the difference between a lamb and a sheep, because a lot of people call themselves the Lamb of God.
the lamb gets sacrificed, the sheep just goes around and gets led, gets strung along,
Uh,
depending on who, huh?
Yo, I'm seeing it, man. I see what you're saying. I'm getting the
Yeah,
pic. I'm getting the pictures loud and clear.
the lamb gets sacrificed and the sheep just get strung along and they're not allowed to you're not allowed to deviate from being strung along.
You once called Christianity a blood religion. What did you mean by that?
Well, like the other religions, it's centered around a sacrifice involving the blood of Jesus. It's a blood ritualistic religion. You break the body of Jesus at communion, and it's supposed to be you drinking the blood. Some people say it's cannibalism, but hey, you kind of could look at it like that. You could like in that type of sense. But I tend to think that I don't want to just um, destroy the whole contents of the different texts in religious circles because there are some things that they do have that remains that you can identify with. So you have to like go through like a fine tooth comb. If you feel you can't leave aspects of your religious um, affiliations, at least use some form of um, conscious awareness of that you're reading something that does contain oil and water. And you can't mix oil and water. You can't. So just know that.
You once said it's not about who you serve, but how you choose to live. Could you give us the reasoning behind that?
Most definitely. Um, Obedience is the creed of slaves. So I don't need to expound a little more on that. I think people get an idea of what that is. Um, how you live your life is most important. Like I said before, the highest calling that you could ever commit yourself to is to live the life that is required. Everybody's supposed to do this. Not everybody here is doing that. And you live the life that's required for you to ascend back up. instead of keep coming back here. Do no harm to anyone. Neither do you allow anyone to harm you, and treat people the way you want to be treated. You have to have compassion. You have to have, you know, you have to have the mindset that you can actually um, live that kind of life without having to answer to anyone, as long as you're basically um, living within your own power. There is no authority outside yourself. I know you've been told, most people have been told differently, but no, there is no, this notion about consent of the governed. uh that's the trick, because see, the leaders that you see around you, they are faulty, just as anyone else could be faulty. uh you're supposed to look at it where, as an adult, you've already had your, you know some of us have had both our mother and father. But even if you had a single parent, you know, you have to honor your most recent ancestors, which would be your mommy and daddy. They were your leaders at the moment when you were, while you were growing up. But as an adult, you have to make a decision for yourself and live accordingly. You have to mature, you have to grow up, and you have to be responsible. Self responsibility is definitely a requisite. But if you look to somebody else to do that for you in the form of these leaders, they'll play your mommy and daddy 24/7, 365 days a year, and they'll swindle you while they're doing it. And you get the consequence of your actions. You consent to be controlled. That's what govern means. So the consent of the governed actually acquiesced and asked for this. If they send you down the wrong path, you asked for it. Every time you vote, you consent to be governed because you asked for it.
You said any act is doable as long as you attach a deity to it. Could you
Oh
elaborate
yeah.
on that? Could you elaborate on that?
Oh man, you read the Old Testament of the Bible. It's like all kinds of stuff going on in there. You know, um, a lot of atrocious acts are actually committed in that drama there. Um, all the wars, you know, even being disrespectful and taking over people's territories, land masses here on Earth, just to be doing it, and you attach the deity to it. That's throughout the Bible too. You could read that. I mean, even up to the point where, you know, you'll see the Israelites being told to kill everything, men, women, children, even the animals, destroy it all, and also take their foreskins too.
What? What?
Yeah, yeah, some disgusting stuff.
I'm sorry, I just haven't read the Bible like that. After I got to page 3, I was like, eh, it was garbage to me then. Because I had one of those mothers that made you read what she was trying to say. And when you read the Bible, you like, you believe this shit? And this is you asking your mother that, by just the things that, what you're talking about, what we know is in there now. And how is this able to pass? People don't see this shit. I know people who have committed fortunes to this religion. Will dog their children for this religion. Will pray to the Lord that their children never prosper. How is it that we fall into that mind fuck?
There's a dark side to every man, woman, and child. If you don't have it bridled, you'll fall for anything for sure. Guarantee. I told you the higher self is what you answer, you respond to, you know. Um, Even the reference to God. I tend to not like that reference or use it because the way it's been used where we are right now. But, you know, God is a conceptualized reference to all eternal beings, like I said in the first part, and it could apply to any being that's eternal, which is every being that you see when you're walking around, whether you walk in the in one country or the other, in terms in the form of people. Or angels are considered the son of God or the sons of God, and God is basically a conceptualized reference version of them, in the adult stage. You know, now we have this thing called devil or Satan or Lucifer. Uh, those are gods in the sense by what they do. They're given. You know what's interesting? You know, if you take an O out of the good, you get God, and if you add a E to evil, you get devil. I find that quite interesting. But I
Say
guess those
that,
those are
say I mean, I heard you, but say it again. I want to get it. I want to see it. Say it again.
yeah. In other words, if you actually extract an O from good, you get God.
Check.
If you take and add a D to evil, you get the devil. So I find that quite interesting. But the point I'm trying to make is, um, sometimes you hear people say the devil incarnate. Well, see, those are titles given or names given to certain collectives and certain beings, but the truth of the matter is they're pretty much representative by what the being is actually doing at the moment. But the so-called God, concept is it's generalized. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that you're an eternal being. So
What do you
by
mean?
your life,
What do you mean by eternal being?
you have multiple life cycles. You have multiple past lives, and you'll have future ones. That has been heavily researched and confirmed, especially from children who have had the ability to access past life memories. They've actually investigated all that. A good source to go to is like Dr. Ian Stevenson. He has over 1,000 or 2,000 cases in his file when he was alive of children that had memories from past life experiences. We don't have our memories as well because we're tampered with in the hospitals. And then, of course, in the food and the water and the air, they tampered with that too. And of course, the vaccines. Let me not forget that. Anybody that thinks those vaccines didn't do anything to you, you're sadly mistaken. They have manipulated you through those things as well. But there are some children that do have access to their memories. Now, I only have access to my crib memory as a baby, and people used to marvel at that. But that's no big deal compared to past life memory. So yes, we are eternal, and it's not. Matter of fact, it's not theory, and it's not a belief. But since it has been researched heavily, it's actually a matter of fact. Yes, you do reincarnate. You do.
I mean, what? Okay, so how old were you when you saw that we do reincarnate? How old were you?
When I finally realized that that's true,
Yeah,
I was in my adult stage.
but so
With your,
but you're saying now that children are making these claims.
yeah, there's quite a few children that have memories. I'll give you a most recent one that was given to me by somebody else. I'll give you a good example. Case in point, there was a couple had a child somewhere around the time after 9/11. The child is quite intelligent. They knew that about him. But they noticed, he kind of like cowered when he would see like an airplane or something like that,
Mhm.
and he wasn't too fond of tall buildings either. But anyway, one they lived in Jersey, New Jersey, So the mother decides to go downtown Manhattan in the World Trade Center area at the time, some years later, and for some reason, her son said that he remembers that place, and she was taken back by that because that's the first time they ever went there. So they never understood it. When he got old enough, he was able to give us certain details that there was no way he could have possibly known. So she kind of tried to put two and two together, and she like researched it a little further, and she found out he was one of the ones that was in the building of the towers when those planes hit.
What?
Yeah, after research, the mother somehow connected the dots. I know a guy I worked with. Um, he has memories of falling or something like that, or and he worked for Boeing, and he even told me that he was regressed, that he was actually a kamikaze pilot from Japan, and he told me he always had this connection to Japan, and he never knew why. He had a thing for Japan. He never understood it.
Wow. So I mean, and so that's why I'm saying that, the whole thing of dying never made sense to me, because it's like, and so my grandmother told me this when I was young. When you pull the blackberry off, another blackberry is going to come to replace it. And she said that's how life is, because she was one of those farmers, and that's how she would tell me how we're connected to the earth and things. You're a part of it. I mean, you die, but you come back. I mean, death was it was not a problem to her.
I agree. I agree because think about it. If you really, um, objectively look at the way the universe expresses itself, it expresses itself in spheres and circles, in cyclonic patterns. You see this when I mean, with whatever truth you can gather from school, you were taught that matter cannot be created or destroyed, but just change its state. So the universe does express itself that way. You can see just through scientific experiments that things go in cyclonic patterns, recycled. You see the process of cloud formation, which is evaporation, and then cloud condensation, which is rain, and you see that cycle over and over again. So since you're part and parcel of the universe, the same goes for you. We're all energy. That's what we are.
We
We're
are
energy.
energy.
We're all energy beings. Even solid matter, that's energy, but it's condensed.
Right.
You convert matter to energy and energy back into matter. It has been done in scientific experiments. It can be done. It's been shown. That's why I do have a fascination with, I mean, this might go too much into the program, but I have a fascination for like time travel. Time travel has been already been, you know, a process that has been ongoing in certain circles. They just don't tell you about it. Some of these science fiction movies, they're actually expressing things that really exist. They just add the fiction part to throw you off. They don't do that with any other genre of movie, just the science movies. So, what I mean, if you're an eternal being, what's time? Time is nothing, you know?
Time is nothing.
It's nothing, really. And if you have the appropriate technology, you can traverse it. Or if you have the appropriate technique
But
with through meditation, you can traverse it. You can do it. You go back in time, you go forward in time.
so let me ask you this. So earlier today, I sent you a video of people flying with just little backpacks. They're going a couple of 100 miles just on backpacks, machines the size of backpacks. I know it's not time travel, but is that just like an inkling of what can be done?
You mean flight on your own?
Yeah.
Um, it's I've heard it being stated that you know flight is possible by other means than just that
No, no,
without
no.
a machine.
Okay, so I sent you a video today of a guy flying on a power motor. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that.
So like you might need some other material to get you there, but it can be done. Would you say that's probably it's not time travel, but it gets you to think that maybe this could be done? Because flying, they got guys flying now in little, I mean, things that are cheaper than cars that can fly you 100 miles, let's say from county to county. There's other ways things can be done. We're just looking at from what they show us can be done. But there's probably billions of people who are out there that have ideas on how things can be done. An example would be like cars. So cars is one of those green, they're coming up with that green stuff now. Let's go green. But the emissions that these petrol gases and all this stuff that they use for fuel is, it kills their argument. So what I'm saying is there's other ways things could be done. We just don't know about them because it's not part of the lexicon.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that in terms of technology and references to flying cars and things like that. I heard that's already being worked on, so
Yeah.
I know what you mean. There are things in our atmosphere that's flying around that's much more have more capabilities than the craft we're flying now. People call it everyday common what's called a UFO. People are seeing those things. I mean, they're seeing things that are like that exceeds the capabilities of the jets that you're flying now. The fastest fighter jet can't even catch them. There's so many people. I personally know people who've actually seen objects come right out of the ocean, right in front of them too. Close enough. At least a guy off the coast of Nova Scotia, I know, he seen a object while they were fishing, and it was at night too. And it really scared both of them because it was pretty close, and the ocean kind of like lit up since it was night, and he thought it was some kind of aquatic creature with luminescence, and it was a craft. It came right out of the water and it shot up right into the sky at a very high rate of speed. Those guys were not drinking and they weren't on smoking anything. He told only reason why he told me is because he knew or heard of what I I would talk about, and he had confidence in telling me about it. You know,
Well,
but there are techniques too.
no, I don't, when people say they weren't smoking anything or drinking anything, I mean, what does that have to do with anything?
Well, because that's the argument people use when witnesses come forward to express things that is not normally talked about. That is the most taboo subject talked about to be talking about in many circles. It's ridiculed for a reason because they don't want you to go there. But that's those reports have been received and written about, and they do have recordings of it on stone tablets of objects like that. But see, for every technology there is an actual um ability that's latent in each and every one of us to do those things. It's just suppressed. That's all. For every technology you see out there, there's it's latent within all of us.
Hundreds. You're right about that. The technology that we could just imagine. and we won't even use our powers for that. So that that's what kind of got me miffed at this point. Now it's like all this talent we have, all this genius we have, we just piss it off. Listen, I know you're on the East Coast time, but I wanted to get this last question out to you.
Oh no, I got time.
Oh, okay. So, well, please take your time on this, because this is something that we talked about earlier, and it's starting to becoming more prominent. And I think with everything that's going on, this information would be off the chain for everybody. And that's the stem cell conversation. Could you talk to us a little bit about stem cells, what they are and what they're used for?
Stem cells are actually the cells that actually develop into any cell that your body contains, no matter what the organ is, part of the body. They're rejuvenated cells. That's what they are. It's in the placenta when you're gestating in your mother, and then when you come out, it's in the placenta. They make sure they get their hands on it, and they cut your umbilical cord before it can drain into you, in terms of, like I said before, and it was in the group. A brother had placed it in there, and all hospitals do this function. They actually cut the baby off from their own placenta, and they take that placenta and they use it for stem cell research and experimentation, treatments in other people's bodies, when that's really actually designed for your baby and only your baby. That's the reason why you can't swap organs and stuff like that, because you have a specific signature, so you got to be on these suppressants, if you get organ donation and things like that. But see, your stem cells can actually rejuvenate. It's also found in your urine also when you piss it out. I suggest people, I don't want to touch on it now, but I suggest people start looking into what's called urine therapy. You'll be shocked what you'll find about that. Try to find everything you know about that there is to know about urine therapy, because see, they even use your urine for things that you would not even believe, that you're using that product and it's somebody else's urine. When they tell you to fill the bottle, when they're giving you a urine analysis and stuff, they don't need all that just to test for the substance that they're looking for. The rest of that, they sell it along with the things that's inside the placenta too. So, I even have a question myself about our existence. I don't think we were supposed to drop these bodies like we do. I think the bodies were supposed to transmute, but something that we're doing that's not actually particularly right is why we don't live as long. We think 100 in so many years is a big deal. You have life forms on this planet that outlive you in leaps and bounds right now, that exist on this planet, starting with the plant kingdom, trees, for instance. That's a good example. You have the tortoise that lives around 200 or so years or whatever. And then you have a creature that is in the ocean. I did not know it existed. I don't know the scientific name they give it, but it's given the common layman's name, the immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish doesn't actually die. What it does is it pulls a function. I refer to it as the Benjamin Button maneuver. That's what the immortal jellyfish does. I don't know if anybody's seen that movie. I heard about it. I never saw it. Starts with a guy. He starts out as an adult and he starts getting younger and younger as time goes on. Well, the immortal jellyfish does the same thing. It transmute into a younger aspect of itself. So I just thought I'd throw that in there as a curveball.
Damn. Strike. You threw it in the stem cells. What other things in the stem cells, in the can we You said the stem cells were used to replacement cells. Is
They
that what
rejuvenate.
they rejuvenate?
Yeah, what happens is you're actually you have stem cells in your body, and what happens is they're not being um utilized the way they're supposed to because of something that we're doing that we're not supposed to be doing.
Could
So
you
it
could you hit on
leads.
that? I mean, that's the part I want to hit on.
Well, I'll give you a good example. The urine therapy, there are people that actually practice that, and this is what had occurred. I'm going to give you a good example. It's going to sound bizarre, but hey, it doesn't matter. But first, I got to tell you, the kidneys are there to basically balance the body. It filters out. It's really urine is really like electrolytes. It has your hormones. It has stem cells in there. It's blood plasma. It has the essences that your body doesn't need now. So the kidneys release that, and then you pee it out. But the 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 urine, in terms of the urine therapy, it has an application that I could only refer to an event that occurred in a mine shaft in South America. There were these men that were trapped in a cave in. They were in the dark for 2 months and 10 days. They drank their own urine for that duration. When they finally got to them, those guys walked out on their own power. They should have been dead long ago.
Right.
They lived. Now, the people that do the therapy, you remember those old westerns? I didn't like westerns, but I had it expressed to me. You remember when, matter of fact, I'll give you a good example. When it comes to anti-venom, you remember those westerns that said you got bit by a rattlesnake? They tell you to pee on it,
Yeah.
or you and it'll be as if it never, like your venom, somehow it neutralizes it. It's your anti-venom. Any creature that has venom in it, if you use that, it'll be like it never happened. In other words, it has the stem cells and it has the very ingredients. Matter of fact, people who do actually drink, what happened with those men when they drink it, what happens is the body reads its own, um it's almost like resetting, like a computer. It reads what needs to be done in the body next, and then it takes care of what needs to be done next. That's what you're actually doing. You're almost like circulating, and I'm not talking about other stuff like the kidneys. Its job, the kidneys, the kidneys' job is what I said it was. The liver has a function to clean the blood out. That's what it does, and that's eliminated through the colon area. You
Right.
know, the waste from the blood and other things. The liver has other functions too, but the kidneys serve as just to balance it. You're in your urine for the 9 months of gestation in amniotic fluid, whether you know it or not.
Well, say that again.
You're in your urine in the amniotic fluid, whether you think it is or not, when
Right.
you're gestating.
Right.
There are people that will tell you that they've had, basically miraculous cures to conditions just from the urine therapy alone. They put it in certain vaccines and certain products. So if you think it's disgusting, think again. You're using products that has it in there. You put it on your. I'll give you a good example. You put it on your skin, right? Your skin will absorb it, and it doesn't smell in the sense of like old urine, like when you see from a pee on the street and stuff like that, and you smell that old urine. You don't get that kind of smell. What happens is it's absorbed by the skin. What happens is you it serves as a very good moisturizer, and it's an exfoliant. Let me tell you something. If you got wrinkles on your hands or anywhere else, you'll see that shit clear up real fast when you're doing it. I said there's stem cells in it. The moment you think of stem cells, think rejuvenation.
Y'all got that? Stem cells, rejuvenation. Well, Jay, hey man, I really appreciate you coming on, hanging out with us tonight, man. I know I learned something. So I'm gonna try that urine therapy. I'm gonna try it because
I'll send you the links. I'd show you different people, and including a sister. She'll break it down to you. That sister's pushing over 50. She looks like she's 20. I'm not kidding you.
you see, this is stuff we have to know about ourselves, y'all. We can't be thinking that we ugly, that our teeth are too big, my hair. We got other qualities about us that are off the hook. But you gotta believe in yourself.
One
Jay,
more thing. One more thing I must note. The
yes, sir.
truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is it it does it doesn't taste good at all. It's actually bitter in my case. But I will tell you this: you kind of look at it like those that medicine you used to take when you were little. At least when I was little. I mean, I'm
Right,
pushing 57 now, but when I was little, there was some medicine that was nasty as hell, but I had to take it because that's what my parents gave me when I was sick.
right,
So you kind of look at it kind of like that. And
right.
I guess it depends on what you've been eating too. But what I'm saying is that it takes you having to get over the fear and the stigmatism that you've been told all your life to see it for what it really is. There's thousands of testimonies relating to that subject. Some you hear through certain links that you'll come across, and others, it can't be talked about by too many people
That's one
because
of
of the stigma
that's one of
attached
those
to it.
taboo. That's one of those taboo subjects, right?
Anything that keeps you from ever using the hospitals and doctors again, yes.
And we see what form we in, what time of day we in. So listening to brothers like this and the sisters I have on, y'all, these are the earth people. They telling you what's up. I mean, get into yourself, find out who you are, what you do, what makes you tick, why your bloodline is still on the planet. Because somebody in your family knows what this brother was telling you tonight. Find that person in your family. Find that person in your bloodline. Do a genealogy test on yourself. Go back through your mothers and fathers and find out who you are. Pick out yourself in that. You will learn a lot. Brother Jay, I appreciate you, man. Thank you very much.
Likewise, Carrie. Have a good night.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon. And listen, we'll be back later on in the week with some more goodies. Trying to post it up a little earlier. Um, Come back and see us next time. We have some more treats for you. Peace.